in New York, as well as the taxi driver who drove Harry and Meghan, have cast doubt on the couple's account of a car chase in the city on Tuesday, which they had described as near catastrophic. Let's just take a look at the timeline of events. The Sussexes' evening began at New York's Ziegfeld Ballroom, where they were attending an awards ceremony. At around 9:50 p.m, they left the venue in an SUV with a police escort to return to the Upper East Side. Followed by paparazzi, they were then driven around for an hour before being taken to a police precinct in that area. At around 11 p.m, their security hailed a cab. While the driver has said they were followed by photographers, he also says he wouldn't describe the journey as a chase. Half an hour later, they returned to the precinct and they got back in their SUV. They stayed there while police blocked traffic in the area, after which they left with no paparazzi whatsoever in tow. Their taxi driver was Sunny Singh, and he spoke to Piers Morgan last night.
They were nervous. You could see the look on their face.
It's been categorised that there was a 2-hour wild car chase through the streets of New York, but
that must have happened before me.
So there was no like car chase when you were there.
Not when they got into my cab. We just went around the block, and two cars were tailing us behind us with a camera, and that was it.
So 2 cars tailing him with a camera, and that was it. That doesn't sound near catastrophic, really, does it? Well, joining me now to discuss this is TalkTV's royal editor, Sarah Hewson. Hi, Sarah. Good to have you back in the studio. I mean, this story goes on, really, doesn't it? And you wonder whether that was the point. Do you think Harry and Meghan wanted this story placed internationally for some reason?
I think this comes down to a matter of principle for Harry and Meghan. It is Harry's war on the media. He's said it's his life work to change the media landscape and the way in which the media operates, particularly in this country. Of course, this took place in the United States. And it is also about privacy and security for them. Look, we have to put ourselves in their shoes, and we know that Harry has spoken about the paparazzi and those flashbulbs going off in your face as being real triggers for him. So I think we can understand that this was an incredibly stressful situation for them. But did they make it worse by trying to evade the paparazzi for an hour and a quarter driving up and down FDR Drive because they really didn't want their location where they were staying to be exposed? Had they just gone back to that residence and accepted that their photograph was going to be taken, this would have concluded in a much shorter period of time. We're also seeing multiple perspectives playing out here, aren't we?
Yes.
The taxi driver talking there came in well after an hour into this and only saw the latter part of it for 10 minutes, so perhaps he wasn't experiencing the same as they were. But then we've heard from the paparazzi photographer who says actually it was their security detail driving recklessly, and that was potentially the biggest hazard here. NYPD have played it down. There are lots of vested interests here as well. You know, we've got people being defensive about their own roles in this, but it does certainly raise more questions than it does answer.
And here's one more question, and this is raised by Omid Scobie, who seems to be, doesn't he, the chosen confidant and conduit of Harry and Meghan. He's the person that they tell stories to, and then he disseminates whatever information they choose to the world's press. And he seems to be saying that there's some kind of bad feeling about the fact that the royal family haven't reached out to Harry and Meghan following this, as I quote endlessly, near catastrophic car chase. But I think most British people would say, and I think lots of other people too, well, what is there to reach out for? Nothing actually happened, fortunately.
And look, Buckingham Palace have made no comment on this, but I mean, the state of relations are zero, really, Vanessa. They're not picking up the phone every day saying, how are you, son? How are you, brother? You know, they are not at that level of communication.
No.
Things are very tense indeed. We'd be talking in a different way had anything actually happened.
I mean, you know, but the idea that there's a kind of lack of courtesy or lack of feeling or lack of fraternal concern for not reaching out when absolutely nothing at all has happened. And somehow, Omid Scobie, as the mouthpiece of Harry and Meghan, using this as an opportunity to castigate the royals and paint them as they have painted them before, cold, unfeeling, reserved to the point of ridiculous reticence. But, in ordinary families, when, thank God, a disaster's averted, you don't fall down the stairs, the house doesn't catch fire, thank goodness, you don't reach out then. You reach out if there's something horrible, not when there isn't, don't you? It doesn't make any sense to me at all.
But this is a couple that polarises, perhaps like no other. You are either you're Team Sussex or you're not.
Yes.
And if you're on Team Sussex and your views are not going to change, that this is just exactly what this couple have been talking about when they talked in Netflix, when Harry talked in Spare, about the way in which they are hounded by the paparazzi and the way in which their lives have been made impossible by that level of media intrusion. If you're on the other side, you're going to say, well, and I've seen it on social media, well, they made it all up. This is all a PR stunt. This is all about Harry's cases in the High Court. It probably doesn't change views if you're going down one path or another, regardless of this. But what it does say to us is this couple are still very relevant. Look how many column inches, look how much coverage there has been of this story since it broke yesterday afternoon, and look at the level of interest in them in New York.
But I think we all remember that part of the Netflix documentary where Harry and Meghan, I think, are in the car being driven somewhere, and they're kind of looking out of the window to see if they're being followed or not. Do you remember?
Yes, and it was in New York, I believe.
Yeah, isn't it just either one car or someone on a bicycle or someone on a scooter or just some very insignificant kind of rather timid-looking non-event of a thing following them or maybe not following them, and you can't help thinking that they're sort of hoping that someone is following them so that it's content for the documentary. You know the bit I mean?
And yes, I do indeed. And what we're seeing here is this blurring of the lines between royalty and celebrity. And they've moved to California, and in the United States they are treated like celebrities. And this is what happens.
Yes.
And
many of the papers today suggesting that this Woman of Vision Awards with Meghan in this gold dress that does show a bit of flesh, which is a very unroyal choice of dress, don't you think, with a kind of cut-out bit in the front where you can actually see Meghan's skin through the dress. I mean, it's very gorgeous and very glamorous, but you couldn't imagine Kate ever wearing a dress like that, or Sophie ever wearing a dress like that, or the late Queen, indeed, ever wearing a dress like that. But lots of journalists suggesting that she was using that Woman of Vision Awards to reposition herself, to consolidate the Sussexes platform. It was a big deal to be there, and they were going to use it for all they were worth.
And I think that's a fair point, because Meghan has been very quiet of late. She wasn't there on the media circuit with Harry when he was publicising Spare. They went out to a restaurant, they went to a game, but this was their first public appearance together at an official event since the publication of Spare. And so it was high profile, and it is about her profile and who she is and what she wants to be. And there she is talking about advocacy for women and girls, wanting to project a kind of stateswoman-like persona and be taken seriously. And they had talked, hadn't they, about, the look back projects being over and now about look forward. They've got new PR firm on board. This was part of that whole reboot, but it's been overshadowed now by this.
Sarah, thank you very much indeed.